Welcome to CleanStart's Cleantech Meetup on community energy. We will be hearing from Jacobe Caditz of SMUD, Grace Park-Bradbury of BlocPower, and Ariana Ortega Ray from Grid Alternatives.
Am I all set? Everybody can see my screen presentation mode? Okay, perfect. Thanks everyone for having me. Like I said, I'm Jacobe Caditz. I manage SMUD's Community Education and Technology Center. And briefly, that's the group that does our commercial, residential, and K through 12 education and a whole bunch of different tactics to get our community excited about renewable energy and zero carbon and knowledgeable about all the things that make our homes more comfortable, convenient, and reduce carbon. So my group sits underneath our Sustainable Communities team. And for those of you that aren't familiar with the Sustainable Communities team, we are the group that goes out and tries to create reinforce equity amongst all our community in Sacramento. And enhance the quality of life for all the folks that we work with. And we do that by focusing on 4 main pillars: social well-being, healthy environment, prosperous economy, and mobility. And of course, given that this is a big focus at SMUD, across SMUD, it's probably no surprise to you that when we were thinking about how are we going to, and what are some of the tools that we have to kind of help lift up our community, as an energy company, right? We saw solar as one of those tools. And just some real brief facts about some of the opportunities around the solar economy. There's over 126,000 jobs in California, solar jobs. These are actually 2019 numbers, so there would be a little bit off from here, but over 126,000 jobs, #1 state in the country, #5 by jobs per capita, but we'll just stick with the total jobs. 46,000 jobs that are related to installation, or 46,000 jobs plus, and a relatively high medium wage for installers that don't have an electrician, that don't have a technical degree. So there's a lot of opportunity here in the solar industry, and probably the folks on the call are probably more aware of this than I am. But when we were thinking about how do we take this new energy economy, and solar is part of that new energy economy. It's been around maybe a little bit longer than some of these other strategies that we're going to be used to get to zero carbon, for instance. But how do we take these opportunities and really use them, #1, take advantage of them in our own community and lift up our community? We thought, well, of course, we'd like to get some of our underserved communities more involved in the solar careers. And we worked, so this is about 2 or 3 years ago, we came up with this concept to work with partners across the region, including the Sacramento Kings, Baker Energy, University of California, Davis, the Black Chamber of Commerce, SHRA, all partners coming together through Promise Zone, and also industry partners like Baker Energy and Spotlight Solar, put together a program to train adults 18 years of age and older and the hands-on and technical skills needed to work in the solar energy industry. And what you see here in front of you is a picture of Les Simmons of the Simmons Center, Pastor Les Simmons, I should say, of the Simmons Center, and there behind him is a solar tree that we installed as part of this program. And the program had, the objective, of course, to train these young adults in the technical and soft skills, and also create some community beautification. I'll give you a few details of the program. And this was our first sort of endeavor into this field, and we learned some things. So #1, it was a 5 weeks, 2 days a week training, 40 hours. We had 25 graduates of the program, and of those 25 graduates, we had 12 placements in the solar industry so far, 12 jobs. So did we change the course, the economic history of Sacramento through this program? No, we didn't. At least in this first program, we'll get there later on. But the thing I'll say is it made a big difference in folks' lives, and the folks that came up to us afterwards, and we have, you go through the program, we're out there every day with the students, and you develop relations with these folks. And just the fact that people come up to us and say, wow, I never thought that I could do this. I didn't think that I could get up on a roof and install solar. I didn't think I had the technical skills, young women of color, engaged in this program, and that was really heartening. The thing I think that made this effort, this first phase, so powerful is that we married both the community partners and the solar industry together. And what I mean by that is our big partner in this first phase was the Urban League. And the Urban League was a fantastic partner. They did the training in their location. They recruited the actual students for the program. They reached out and figured out who's going to most benefit from the program. And they didn't only do that, but it's hard for some folks to participate in programs like this. So childcare, right? Who's gonna watch the kids while I'm getting trained, or how am I going to get there? I have transportation issues, and so on and so forth. They helped solve all those issues. They did resume reviews, got folks interview clothes and those types of things. So they were a really important community partner in this effort. And on the other side, of course, we had the solar industry. Baker Energy was a phenomenal partner. If you know about Dusty Baker, I'm not actually a sports fan, but every time I would talk about this program, people would be like, "Oh, Dusty Baker, amazing baseball Davis person." So, any case, actually, that's a picture of Dusty up there, very hands-on in this project, installing some signage on the solar tree. But Baker Energy, and the rest of the solar companies really helped us understand, like, what are they looking for in employees, right? And somewhat surprisingly to me, it's not necessarily the technical skills that they were looking for, but they were looking for sort of the soft skills. How do we get people to show up on time? How do we make sure that they know how to communicate, how to dress for the job, how to be safe on the job site? So all those things, and we learned a lot. And like I said, we felt it was really successful. And we're still in communication with the graduates, and we're still helping to place them in jobs. In fact, just about a month and a half ago, this program really, folks graduated about a year and a half ago. But a month and a half ago, we placed another person in a job, and we feel really good about that. The graduates graduated. The program ended about 2 weeks before COVID shut everything down, and that was really unfortunate timing. And so we were just kind of scrambling around to figure out. We knew we wanted to do another program, but there was some advantage, as it turns out to us, with this taking a little bit of pause with COVID. And that is because in the interim, while we were figuring out like how are we going to deliver another course, SMUD really launched our 2030 clean energy vision. And Promise and I were chatting about this earlier before we got started. But the thing I want to say there are 2 points, right? Number one is that in order for us to get to zero carbon by 2030, this is going to be a community effort, and we're going to need lots of community partners. And training folks in solar installation and associated battery installation or battery chargers, and EVs, that's going to be a huge part of this 2030 vision. And also, it's really important to point out that our vision includes the word inclusive. We need to be a powerful partner for an inclusive zero carbon future, and I've highlighted that here for this presentation, right? That means that we don't leave any community behind. We know that there are communities that historically get left behind when we advance as a region, and SMUD is being very thoughtful about making sure that we're lifting everybody up, that everybody gets an opportunity to participate in this effort, and that we're not disadvantaging or further disadvantaging any communities in the region. So with that 2030 vision launch, that really gave us extra impetus to kind of go a little bit bigger in our second phase. And we actually partnered with Grid Alternatives because Grid Alternatives, of course, expert solar installers, they have a fantastic community program. And as we were chatting with them, we learned about just the phenomenal training program that they already have. And we sort of, I think, took some of the best elements from both of our programs. So I'll say in this new phase of the program, which is going on right now, our goal is to start training 100 folks from the community. It's instead of 40 hours, it's 160 hours. So that was one of the things that we wanted to improve upon from our first training, is actually get more hands-on training, technical skills and so forth in the whole training. So 4 full weeks, 160 hours. There's up to $1,000 stipend for folks that complete the whole training. There's actually 2 phases to the training. There's a online portion that lasts about 2 weeks, and then there's an in-person smaller group, only 8 folks at a time, hands-on piece where they're learning about how to wire J boxes and bin conduit and all that kind of thing. We're still relying on community partners to help fill the pipeline of students. So Urban League is still involved, the Simmons Center, La Familia, other community organizations that are just helping to spread the word. These are all SMUD sustainable community partners that are identifying the folks that are going to come participate. And we don't have a single graduate yet. We actually just this week started the second phase of the training, which is the 2 weeks hands-on portion. Although Grid let me know, I think a week and a half ago, that we've got one person employed already just through the first 2 weeks. So fantastic, way ahead of schedule. We are expecting somewhere around 37% employment at the low end. Hopefully we'll get a little bit more of that at the end of this program. And if I'll say, if folks are like, wow, I think I know some people that would be that would love to take advantage of a program like this. We're still taking applications. I've got I'll put my contact information up. People are welcome to forward them over my way, and I see I'm just about out of time anyway. So let me finish there and say thank you, and I guess we'll take questions when we get to the whole group.
Next, I would like to welcome Grace Park-Bradbury, COO of BlocPower.
So thank you. Thanks for having us here. We're thrilled to be talking to folks in Sacramento. I actually have family in the Central Valley, so I'm a lifelong Californian. So really excited that BlocPower has expanded here to California. It is an important and strategic and industry thought leader in all things electrification. So we are here. We're learning a ton about how to bring smarter, greener, and healthier electrified buildings to all, for all. Some facts just to start us off here. We have a ton of buildings already in our built environment. There's a lot of great work and codes and standards for new construction that are happening that I think are leading into the cost efficiencies and the health benefits of electrification. But we have a ton of existing buildings and they are highly inefficient. 5 million small, medium enterprise buildings, which are outdated, inefficient. And with that increased energy usage, because some of these buildings are 100, 150 years old sometimes, they are not as energy efficient as they need to be for the future. Related to that, and something we want to emphasize that, especially with COVID, we've all kind of begun to emphasize a bit more, is that indoor air quality is affected by these inefficiencies. The materials in our buildings are making us sick. And so those two combined make for a fleet of buildings, our built environment that is inefficient and unhealthy. In order to fix that situation, all these building owners have to navigate a web of various stakeholders, various contractors, designers, permits, equipment, financing, everything. That it's a real morass to get from not great to better. And what we found is that that's a messy and fragmented process that really increases project costs. That's one of the big issues right now in terms of how do we get these deep retrofits, these electrification measures over the line. It's cost is a huge barrier. So the cost of not upgrading, of not doing anything, is actually pretty substantial. You've heard of President Biden's commitment to having 40% of, he said it's climate day today, so I'm talking jobs today. The cost of upgrading is not just avoided or missed opportunities in terms of job creation. It's also really expensive to continue to operate our buildings this way, both in terms of energy as well as the health impacts to our communities. So we waste a lot of energy, we waste a lot of human capital, and we really need to fulfill some of the commitments that we've made publicly and legally into upgrading and electrifying our buildings. BlocPower has been around for about 8 years, and we are based in Brooklyn. New York is our home base, and we have a lot of experience bringing in the technologies to electrify, to bring energy efficiency, to remediate many of the multifamily and small commercial buildings in Brooklyn. We are expanding here in California, bringing a no money down electrification solution. And as Thomas mentioned, we just closed our Series A. So we are looking to build on the 1,000+ buildings that we have projects that we've successfully completed. And we have right now 5 more to add in Oakland and 2 more in Los Angeles. And we're hoping to bring more throughout California. So just by way of background, what we do is we tackle the whole value chain, that morass of different parties we are trying to put into a straight line and be a trusted advisor for building owners specifically, as well as program administrators from the utilities or cities perspectives. We support acquisition of customers using our technology to target the best customers, the best building owners for these programs based on building characteristics, who is in a special energy hog, And we also have an environmental justice scoring we can also layer over that to really target these dollars to go to the right folks. So we're involved in the acquisitions phase. Our software platform allows us to leverage the machine learning, all the technology stack to bring about a more lower touch, lower cost analysis layer for buildings. We then work with the customer to finance the whole project. And then we construction manage and supervise the installation because we deliver heating and cooling or electrification as a service. That final piece, performance monitoring, is also really critical, especially here in California, where we are all much more cognizant of the fragility of our grid. Maybe not as much as Texas right now, but there's a lot that we can learn from, a lot that the industry is heading towards, and a lot that our electrification measures really need to plug into in terms of the bigger network in the picture. Just to illustrate kind of the acquisition piece, most folks find us through our website, BlocPower.io. We help them when they are able to answer a few brief questions on our website, what it takes, whether their building kind of qualifies for our program. These are the remediations that we offer. We are biggest on air source heat pumps because that's the heating and cooling, I should emphasize, especially for SMUD. I know it gets really hot in the valley. It allows for heat in the winter and cooling in the summer, all on electricity. In California, our ability to store a lot of energy in our hot water heat pumps, that's also something I know that is being heavily emphasized by various utilities, as well as the CPUC and the new tech and build programs as well. We're going to want to harness the power of those heat pumps in our water heaters for demand response and load shifting as well. As part of heat pump technology, hot water technology, insulation, air sealing, energy efficiency in general. And I'll focus as well on the for all aspect of our program. There's a significant amount of remediation that's also required, especially in the buildings that we target, in the communities that we target, which include lead, mold, and asbestos. So all of these technologies are brought to bear in this more holistic approach to building upgrades that we look at. Combining that analysis with financing enables us to cost effectively deliver projects. It's the software that drives down the acquisition costs. It's the financing that enables customers to take on an otherwise fairly significant deep building retrofit. And just like the lessons of residential solar are, not too many people will buy a $30,000 to $60,000 upfront, even if it saves you money over the long term. The real thing that has enabled that industry to explode has been the amortization of costs over a long period. And similarly, one lesson we're learning from that industry is very much the zero down financing that we're bringing for electrification measures as well. Just a little detail on the financing, because this matters to a lot of people. We obviously zero down is a strong enticement. We attempt to match the customer payments for this lease to the amount of energy savings that the upgrade would deliver. That's not always possible, but we know that that's very important, especially for many of the communities that we address. And so we work very hard, very creatively on the financing side to be able to deliver that. That's different from guaranteeing a certain percentage savings, which I know has been a pitfall in many programs in the past. We also participate and pay for performance. We do stand by our energy audits and our assessments, but there's just a huge degree of variability in terms of lifestyle. We're adding AC for some folks. We are adding superior heating and cooling. It's not always a net, it's just something to consider, so. And then this is something I think that, especially this past year, especially as our country has been grappling with a lot of the legacy of systemic racism and what is denied for many members of our society. For all is a big aspect of our mission. And climate justice is something that we are really, I think, as a society coming to terms with what it means to burden communities with environmental justice and now climate justice. And in many of the programs, in many of the conversations we're in with legislators, with think tanks, with community members, there needs to be a real acknowledgement that we are not all starting from the same starting line. There are market-based approaches. We are a market-based approach. But there is a ton of work that has to happen to kind of invest in the communities that have been structurally denied and bring them to the starting line so that they can electrify. When you have decades, generations of disinvestment in infrastructure and deferred maintenance, you just can't swap out, you can't add solar to a crumbling roof, you can't add heat pumps to a house that's filled with asbestos. So that's one major piece that I think that we are really kind of coalescing the thinking around, especially in terms of the electrification conversation in the community that's emerging, that we do need to bring more folks to the starting line for this to be a real credible piece and a real credible way to get that 40% that President Biden's mentioned. As part of that, another programmatic aspect that we are really want to speak to and name and address head on is that there is very much a gap in trust in terms of many of these communities we serve. One of our developers here in West Oakland, Mark Hall from Revalue, was actually saying many of these communities are considered hard to serve or difficult to reach. And they're only difficult to serve if you don't know how to speak to folks and if you don't leverage the communities of trust that exist. And so, again, this goes back to, yes, market mechanisms, but yes, also partnership. Just as Jacob mentioned, there are important community allies that need to be leading the charge, really. And I think addressing that gap in trust is extremely important when designing programs. And the last point here is in trying to electrify and trying to get a capital project through a market process, if we don't address the humans and the communities that actually that this would benefit in working to reduce carbon, we can't actually enable these things. We have to talk about health. We have to talk about the value we bring to communities. There has to be a sense of ownership, and there have to be jobs. So that's the theme, it seems, for today. We have a small program here in Oakland that we're working through that we are learning from significantly. But I just wanted to point out in Brooklyn, in New York, where we have, again, a more robust track record, it's very much been a pillar of our company's efforts to invest in workforce development, bring folks, people of color, women, veterans, returning citizens. Many of the folks that I think it's fair to say, Jacob, I think you may have noticed this in your efforts to date as well, that the clean energy industry has not paid enough attention to, has not made enough seats at the table to have the right folks kind of benefit from the clean energy revolution. And I think it's kind of an underinvestment that I think is really becoming obvious to more people now. So I'm hoping that in this next phase of the clean energy revolution in electrification, we can really address the shortcomings, that short-sightedness, and bring more of our communities along and really share the benefits of that. Quick snapshots of our success to date. We have a case study in New York City focusing on Brooklyn and Queens. This was one very successful program that we completed in 2018 or 19, actually before my time here. And then just because we are compelled by all things California, this is our very nascent Oakland portfolio right now. We are heading towards growing this out, exploding this, but we have currently 5 buildings in construction. The 3 additional that that was a little forward speaking, they're very close. But there's affordable housing in there, there's multifamily housing in there, and we are bringing real tangible financial and clean energy health benefits to these homes and buildings that we're addressing. So thank you for your time. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to you.
Next, I would like to welcome Ariana Ortega Ray. She's been a huge CleanStart supporter, connecting us with things in the past. She's going to talk a little bit about what Grid Alternatives does and how they're approaching some community energy projects.
Great. So thank you for having me, Thomas and Gary. Always glad to join CleanStart and love how you bring the community together. I am representing Grid Alternatives North Valley. I am the Development and Strategic Partnerships Manager. I'm Arianne Ortega Ray, and I'm happy to tell you more about Grid. So what is Grid Alternatives? I know Jacob gave you a little sneak peek at what we do, but we are a local nonprofit We have a vision of a rapid, equitable transition to a world powered by renewable energy that benefits everyone. And that ties in with our mission of building community-powered solutions to advance economic and environmental justice through renewable energy. As Grace mentioned, this transition is happening now. We see President Biden talking on the news. We see Governor Newsom and Mayor Steinberg, and even, as Jacob mentioned, just yesterday, we had the 2030 carbon zero plan from SMUD get approved. And so these things are happening, and it's not this vision that is in the future. It's something that's happening now. And that's why we need to really put an emphasis on making sure that everybody gets to participate in that, especially the benefits that come along with embracing renewable energy. There's so much that can be benefited from it. And we need to make sure that it's those communities who've been historically excluded that do get to participate and do get to enjoy a lot of that. So GRID operates on a triple bottom line. As we are a nonprofit, profit is not the biggest thing that we're striving for, but we like to define our bottom line as people, planet, and employment. And so with every project that we work on, we try to incorporate those pieces and making sure that we're spreading benefits in all those different ways. And I'll dive into our different programs just to give you a little taste of how we incorporate that into our programs. So I'll start with talking about some of our solar installation programs. The first being our single family solar program. This is kind of the bread and butter core of how GRID was started all the way back in 2004. We started to see that those who were receiving and adopting solar were usually more affluent, and those who needed some of those energy benefits and savings on their electricity bill were not able to gain the reach to receive solar. So that's where the program really started, to try to find a way to benefit lower income homeowners and help them to receive solar on their homes. And as part of this, we try to incorporate that job training piece. And so on all of our projects, we incorporate those who are in our job training program so they can get some on the roof experience. And we like to bring, pre-COVID, we like to bring a lot of the homeowners out and kind of engage and get people to interact with others within their own communities. And I think it was a really important piece to just try to let people connect and communicate. And what we often see in this program is someone will see their neighbor getting the solar, and then they'll reach out, and then they try to get solar themselves, and we'll see blocks kind of transform at a time. And that's where you see it really is powerful, the impact of community, and seeing what someone's doing down the block, it will slowly change the look and the renewable energy that's brought into a full community. And we also have our multifamily and commercial solar projects program. And this is sort of a newer program. We started it about 3 years ago or so, and it was really looking at the single family solar had been so beneficial for lower income homeowners, but there's a huge demographic of folks that are renters, and they were not able to enjoy the benefits of solar. So, we've been trying to work with affordable housing developers, have been working with mutual housing locally a lot, and visionary home builders, and all of the different really great folks who are building these communities and thinking about their tenants and how they can pass along those savings for energy. And we've also turned in the other direction for some commercial buildings, looking at nonprofits. I think especially this grew during the pandemic, where we were looking at things like food banks, where their demand had tripled, and sometimes there's just nowhere else to get funds, even though generous folks are donating. You have to get creative, and so getting solar was a way to bring down their overhead costs. And through partnership with SMUD, we're always glad to partner with SMUD in many different ways, but through partnership with them, we were able to get solar for the Sac Food Bank. And that was really a great collaboration. It allowed them to add some more programming of a program that allowed them to have clothes for those who needed clothes to go shopping with dignity for job interviews. So you really see these benefits trickle down into many different unanticipated ways. And that's what we love to see is, how do we get as many partners to come together and spread these benefits throughout many different organizations. And we also have a tribal program. This is not something that our office in the North Valley really has been able to participate in as much. It's more something I think we've seen in our New Mexico and Arizona areas, and our Colorado office has participated, but something there has been a lot more growth of funding in this area. And I think it's something we definitely want to incorporate a lot more. The tribal community has definitely experienced many injustices historically, and a lot of their reservations don't have very secure access to energy, or reliable energy, I think is the better word for it. We've heard from a lot of tribes that they're looking for energy sovereignty. And so we work with them in two ways, through the projects that are similar to the single family and the multifamily, like I shared with you. And we also have a tribal solar accelerator fund that we were able to put together, where tribes come to us on their own and they come up with their own ideas for projects, and we help them to fund those. And so just trying to work with different folks who might not have access to certain resources, figuring out ways that we can spread that decision making, spread that power as much as we can. And we also have a community solar program. This also is something that we're looking to expand in our North Valley office. I guess I didn't share exactly where our territory is, but from the North Valley office, we cover Sacramento up to the Oregon border and south to San Joaquin Valley. And there are grid offices all throughout California, in Colorado, and in Washington, DC. So we have quite a bit of coverage elsewhere, and we get to learn from each other. So I think our North Valley office is learning a lot from our Colorado office right now, who has done many community solar projects. And the community solar is a really nice option when there might be not really good circumstances for receiving rooftop solar. There might be too much shade in an area, or there might be a bad roof that, you know, people aren't able to use that. And so community solar allows you to use land elsewhere where it might not be utilized, and could have a field of solar, and it could benefit many different people who need those savings. And this is something we are hopeful that we can bring to the region. We have a case that I'd like to share in the spirit of community energy. Go back, okay. And so this is a case from our office in the Inland Empire. So Southern California, it was California's first low-income community solar project. And I think it's nice sometimes just to hear ways that other communities have come together to make really new, innovative projects come to life. And so this project was where our Inland Empire office got together with the Santa Rosa Band of Coahuila Indians and Anza Electric Cooperative. So it was their local utility, and they put their thinking caps on. They thought of how they could come together in this collaboration, and they received grant funding from the California Department of Community Services and Development. And they received that funding to do a very large array, nearly 1 megawatt solar array. And the way that they did this was the utility gave a little, they donated in the sense of building some local infrastructure, putting up power lines that weren't there. They really were able to set that foundation. And the tribe had this land that they were able to lease to the utility in exchange for getting the energy that's generated in that solar farm. And so from this project, the entire community of the Santa Rosa Band were able to really have their energy bills covered and to lease their land to the utility. And the utility was able to cover up to 200 of their lower income customers to receive savings on their bills as well. And so it was really just seeing how people could all do their part, figure out where they might have resources that they can contribute and what they might be able to take as a benefit. And it really benefited the entire Anza community, where it was primarily a low income community. And I think the nice piece on top of all of that was that there was the job training incorporated on such a large project. So there were many tribal members who were able to get experience, work on these different panels, and walk away with really hands-on on the job training that they wouldn't have been able to access otherwise. And we also have an international program. Grid has many programs, so excuse me if for going through them, but we're almost to the end of them. So our international program operates in Nicaragua, Mexico, and Nepal. And so we try to work a little bit differently than we do in the States internationally. We will have more rural off-the-grid communities really come to us expressing their need for what they might be looking for as far as generating energy off the grid. And we'll do not necessarily homes. A lot of times we'll do birthing centers or different places where there could be community employment or different things that really serve the community at large. And these are usually volunteer experiences that we like to extend to folks who want to get that hands-on solar installation experience and somewhere new and really interact with different local communities. And so we're hoping to bring that back. We had to put it on pause a little bit during COVID, but it's nice to just be able to see the many different ways that renewable energy can serve communities. It really is unique to each place and what their needs are and how you can get creative with how you serve them. So as a whole, Grid has a really large growing impact. We've installed solar for over 18,000 different buildings, which is over 66,000 kilowatts. It's a whole lot of kilowatts, but if that doesn't translate as well, we also think of it in terms of all the savings that come from that solar, all the different individual utility bills. I think it's like Jacob was saying with the training, you know, each person you get to know their story and how much each month saving really means. And so we've saved up to $458 million for families across the board, trained over 32,000 participants in all of our different regions, and saved 1.2 million tons of greenhouse gas emissions. And for those who don't know how to translate it that well, because I don't think of that in tons of greenhouse gas emissions, that's the equivalent to planting over 22 million trees. So I think that mental picture really paints something for the impacts. And our workforce development program, I know Jacob shared a bit on that. We're so happy to partner with SMUD this year on increasing the reach in Sacramento to train 100 folks in solar installation. And so I won't go into all the details. He did a really good job of summarizing what that experience is. But I think the one piece that we're excited for this year is we're starting to incorporate EV, electric vehicle charging infrastructure installation, as well as battery storage installation. So we see the technology is going in this direction and really want to prepare all these different folks to have options for their career and, you know, maybe do solar and battery storage or solar and EV or, you know, mix and match. And so the more that they're able to learn, the more options they have for a really growing career where they can develop. Quickly go through our policy leadership. You know, this is something that we're trying to spread beyond just our few offices throughout the country, but there's a lot more impact that can be made. Our CEO was able to have the privilege to speak at the Leader Summit on Climate recently and talk about low-income solar and clean energy for all. Really, I think it all boiled down to clean energy is not a luxury. It's something that's a necessity for all of us. And so we need to make sure that that is thought through, that is at the top levels, what they're thinking and how they're thinking, and making sure that this is something we can spread. For clean mobility, basically, we're just trying to spread access. Clean mobility is transportation. It's, you know, the biggest emitter, and it's one of the biggest expenses that someone has. And so we can kind of really address both of those issues at once and make sure that we're lowering tailpipe emissions locally and also saving people at the gas station, you know, cutting their bills, cutting their costs for transportation. And there are incentives and there's so much to be learned. It can be overwhelming for folks. So we try to provide access to education and just help people navigate their way through so they can make it easier for them to access clean mobility. And so I just have our different socials. If you want to keep up with us, we have lots going on all the time. Love to connect with folks and usually love having volunteers come out. Anyone you don't have to have any solar background can come out and get on a roof. It's on pause for COVID, but if you keep up with us, we hope to bring that back later this year. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you very much, Ariana.